Welcome to Your Music Saved Us, where two friends blast ourselves into the past to relive and recontextualize the alternative Christian music we grew up listening to in the 1990s. My name's Clifton, and I'll be holding your hand on this journey today. Joining us to take the wheel for this magic motor carriage ride is our resident early bird, Jay. How are you doing this morning?
You're right, Clifton. We're recording in the morning. I've been up early, getting ready for, this will show when we recorded this, but getting ready for some July 4th camping, and yeah, good to go.
So what are we listening to this week, Jay?
Now, why the rush, Clifton, dude? Can't we just chill for a minute? Jesus loves you, man. Relax and feel that everlasting love, man. You just gotta kind of roll with it. Enjoy it.
I mean, because this is a podcast and nobody's listening to hear us like vibe in silence.
All right. Fine. We're listening to Dakoda Motor Company's sophomore album, Welcome Race Fans.
They're sophomore. Why didn't we start with the first one?
You know what? Because I never really listened to that one as much. And this is our list of our albums, so whatever, right?
Fair. Okay. How did this album make you feel, man?
Kind of nostalgic. It brought back a lot of pleasant memories. Yeah, it was good.
Did you have to go digging through some bargain basement bins for this? Or
no, it's on Spotify, thank goodness.
What?
Yep.
That's super easy. Okay. All right, well, tell us a bit about the band.
I will tell you, they have an active website.
Today.
DakodaMotor.co, and Dakoda is D-A-K-O-D-A, not D. But that makes this so much easier. Thank you. So basically what I'm going to tell you is pretty much from their website. They formed in the early 90s in La Jolla, California, which, by the way, I looked up and is kind of like it's on the coast, and it's like a northern suburb of San Diego. And I think that's kind of important to think about, because I think that kind of fits like the vibe and the feel of this band a little bit. But anyway, they're formed by professional surfer Peter King and Davia Vallecillo. I hope I'm saying her last name right. It was Peter's brother, David King, who was in a band called Mary's Danish, who I think got a little bit of, like alternative rock airplay. I never heard of them until he did this.
Yeah, I never heard of them.
Anyway. He told Peter if he started a band, they could be the opening act. So their first performance got televised on MTV Rock the Vote. They found a niche with their female lead singer, long-haired surfer guitarist, and a series of catchy songs. Peter recruited drummer Chuck Cummings on drums, and Dave Koval on lead guitar, and Derek Toy on bass guitar. Their first album, Into the Sun, was recorded, I don't know who this is, but at the home studio of Earl Mankey of Sparks, and was produced by Louis Gutierrez of Mary's Danish and Michael Gurley of Dada in 1991. So I didn't realize this, but it was they did it on their own. And I listened to a podcast with Peter, and he said actually one of the guys from Billabong gave them the $5,000 they needed to record this album. So it got picked back up by gospel label Myrrh, which we'll talk more about later, and re-released. And so this album was recorded in 1993, although I believe it was not released until 1994 on Myrrh. It's also recorded by the guy from Mary's Danish. I'm pointing this out because it's a little bit strange to me that Myrrh Records had all this like non-Christian affiliation with this. But anyway, they talk about on the website, this one had a much more polished and professional sound. The last song, which we'll talk about, Rockin' in the Mall, was used in a Chevy Camaro radio advertisement. And just to catch you up a little bit more, right after this album came out, Davia left the band. Someone named Melissa Brewer joined, who sounds a lot like her, surprisingly. They did a really good job. They had their last record, came out in 96, called Railroad. It was actually on a major label on Atlantic. And just a couple other things to point out before we jump into this. During this time, so 94 through 96, Peter King was the host of an MTV game show called Sandblast. And I put in my notes, but this was mind-blowing for many Christian kids at the time, or at least for me. Like, dude's in a Christian band, he's a professional surfer, he hosts a show on MTV, like, could this guy get any cooler? Oh my God.
Oh, really? Because in one of the YouTube videos I watched, it said, Peter King, the host of a terrible MTV show.
It probably was terrible, but that's the thing, right? I'm a Christian kid. I wasn't watching MTV, But it just seemed like he had some credibility, outside of the Christian scene. And one other thing, they were going to just be called Dakoda, the band, which evidently was a name that Peter thought he might want to name one of his kids one day. I don't know if he actually did. Probably not. But they found out another band had that name, so they added Dakoda Motor or added Motor Company to the end. There you go.
I really wanted to hear the story behind Motor Company, but that's disappointing.
I know. And I'm sure we'll do an episode on Javelina Rail Company, and it's basically the same thing. There was another band named that, and they had to add Rail Company. Yep.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. I noticed there's only 2 albums on Spotify, though. Is that the Atlantic album isn't on Spotify? That's weird.
Yeah, it's strange, right? Because it's a major label. You think that wouldn't be an issue to keep it up. I don't know why.
Okay.
I still have my copy of it right here. I'm looking at it, but yeah, unclear. But we can talk more about that album at the end.
So when did this album come into your life?
Yeah, so I think I got this in '94 after it came out. This would have been like my 8th grade year.
Mm-hmm.
And this was kind of one of those albums that helped me transition from like Newsboys, Audio Adrenaline, DC Talk type stuff into more, I'm doing air quotes, but alternative music.
So I never listened to this back in the day. And to explain myself, I have to admit something that's not going to make me look great. It hasn't come up yet in the show for some reason.
Oh, no, that's okay. I'm sure I've said stuff that doesn't make me look great. So go ahead, Clifton.
So I really, really did not like, and I'm going to put this in quotes here, female vocals back in the day.
Uh-huh.
I can't explain exactly why. I've been thinking about it, though, and I think, so part of it, I think, was, especially if the woman didn't play an instrument, I always felt like, first off, play an instrument, and I think that's like a little bit of like the punk rock part of my ethos there, and I also I think like, if you're just recruited to sing, I felt that like that was kind of weird. But then also, and we have talked about this, I don't typically like people who can sing. So the bands I like typically had people who had guys who couldn't sing, but they were just doing it because that's what the band required. So I think that was also part of it. I don't know.
Now, do you think, and I say this probably because I helped some of these views, because this is something that's come up a lot on this podcast already, is I guess kind of the church's like view of women in general, and I'm being really kind right now when I say it. Do you think underlying it all, that could have been part of it too? I mean, I don't know. I'm wondering the same thing for myself.
No, I don't. I mean, I don't think the church thing had anything to do with it, honestly, because even though I was pretty bought in at that point in my life, I don't think that I had a strong feeling about women in front of a microphone.
Okay.
But I think that there's probably also just the fact that I'm a guy, you're a guy. People writing vocals that we identify with are going to be guys, not typically women, for the most part.
So it sounds like you knew of this band at the time, but just were like, female singer,
Yes.
Nope.
Well, no. So I probably gave it a chance, but it was because it was early on, right? It's 1994, so it's early on in my exploration of music. So it probably actually, if anything, it probably reinforced, and we'll talk about that as we get to the songs. It probably reinforced my my stance on quote unquote female vocals. Now, to make myself feel better, I made a quick list of bands that I have listened to and do listen to today that do have female vocals.
Okay.
And it's not a great list, honestly. Like, I could probably do better, but it's not. I don't think it's true. Has been true over the years that I have continued to avoid that.
And there's actually, on a side note, there's a lot of good female like artists out right now, kind of in the.
Oh yeah.
I'm thinking like Lucy Dacus, Julian Baker, like so many, Big Thief, like so many good groups. Mm-hmm. That's another podcast.
Yeah.
But
And I'm always 5 years behind, so like Imogen Heap and yeah. Anyway, so
right.
I agree, and I'm a huge fan of shoegaze, and there's a lot of women in front of the microphone in shoegaze. So
there you go.
Yeah. All right. So getting back to Dakoda Motor Company, do you have any fond memories of listening to this album?
Yeah. So the thing I remember most is they put out a VHS tape at the time And I don't know, it may even come like packaged with this. I don't know, but it had music videos for 4 of the songs and like a little other footage of the band from their tours on
Yeah.
previous albums and stuff. It was probably only half an hour long, but I was obsessed with this tape. Like, I don't know how many times I watched it, but I just thought this band was so cool. First of all, and I still kind of think this, I think their music videos were much better quality than a lot of the like Christian ones you saw at the time.
Oh yeah.
So that was one thing. Like, it just seemed cool to me. But also, they on that video they had some kind of like tour montage, and it seemed so cool. They were skateboarding. At one point, they're like snowboarding down the roof of a Red Roof Inn in Illinois during a tour. I just was like, oh my God, this band is so cool. It just kind of blew my mind at the time. And funny enough, I almost remember like the videos and that tape more than the album.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, I watched it a lot.
And this came out about the same time as Poor Old Lou's Sin, and we talked about the same thing there, that you had a VHS of 4, right about 4 of the songs, right?
Yeah. That Sit and Stare video definitely got a ton of play as well.
Right.
So, back in the day, pre-DVD, those VHS tapes, especially for kids that can't drive yet, they were popular.
Yeah. Any songs stand out in your memory?
The one that stands out the most, I think, is the song Uglier, which is funny because I think that song sounds the least like the band. But after re-listening to it now, I remember almost all of them.
So before you listened again, what were your expectations? What were your thoughts going into this?
I wasn't sure because a lot of these albums I have revisited at some point since like, the mid or late 1990s. I don't think I ever had with this one. So I was not sure at all. No real expectations, but yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, it's very of its day, I think, in the music. But did it hold up?
Yeah, in some ways. I feel like, and I'm going to be curious to get your take as we go through it. I feel like some of the songs for sure, some not so much. It did, though, really occur to me that I felt like they're pretty talented musicians.
Yeah.
Like, this is... I no offense to Pocket Change, kind of that's our last episode, but like I feel like there's a vast difference in the musical ability, So
yeah, but even from your telling of the formation of the band, other than Peter King, it sounds like everyone else here was kind of recruited for their abilities.
Yeah, I think you're right. And we'll talk about it at the end, but Chuck Cummings, for instance, the drummer, I mean, he was in a bunch of bands before this and a bunch after this. Like, so,
okay.
Yeah, he was, especially with the Mike Knott connection and everything. But, yeah, quality musicians on this for sure.
Well, let's dive in and talk about this album. Let's start with the first song, Alive.
Yeah, I think if you ever heard their first album, which I only listened to a little bit, this immediately tells you something is different because it's a lot more upbeat. It kind of starts off with that like driving bass and drums. The distorted guitar comes in about 15 seconds later, and this is just very clear statement that this is not their first album.
Yeah, it's a lot more punk than I expected.
Yeah. I mean, even putting it on now and replaying, I was like, oh, okay, all right, this is pretty good to start off. And so Davia's vocals come in, and and the chorus on this one is pretty simple. It's just alive.
Yes.
Take our hands, lift us up, we are bound. Alive. See the shadow from the setting of the sun. Take our hands, we won't come down.
And they pull off that chorus pretty catchy, even though it's just one word, but it is very short.
Yeah. I think another thing that stands out is kind of the song slows down for the bridge, and it's probably not the right term, but the term I put is a little bit sludgy kind of sounding, before then picking up speed and having like a crazy lead guitar solo. which I think that's probably why they recruited Elliot, who wasn't on their first album, because he just,
Right.
that seems to be what he does in almost every song, is just play guitar solos, which, to 14-year-old Jay, this seemed like real rock. Like, oh my God, I mean, think about it. We had talked about Audio Adrenaline and Newsboys in some of our other episodes. This is like completely different animal, it seemed like.
Yeah.
It seemed a little,
definitely.
Yeah, a little bit more dangerous. I don't know. It was just, it seemed very cool.
And my notes on that were, a really boring rock guitar solo. A faster and obnoxious rock guitar solo.
Well, you gotta think back to the 14-year-old version. It seems cool.
I think so. How much did you grow up listening? Like, did your dad listen to a lot of classic rock? What we call classic
my
rock
dad was
back
more
then?
into oldies and stuff. So, which I guess that's oldies now, but at the time, like 50s, 60s type stuff.
Right. So for me, I grew up with my dad listening to Fleetwood Mac and Heart and Led Zeppelin and Creedence Clearwater Revival, and so for me, I think when I heard, especially when the vocals come in, it reminds me a little bit too much of Heart, I think, and especially Barracuda, in that it's just these kind of overly, okay, it's not as dramatic as Heart, their vocals, but it's still kind of a semi-dramatic, vocal, and I don't know, there's something about it that annoys me.
What's it like to live in a world where peace is a choice for every boy and girl? Vote for God and paste into your heart. Won't you give God a star?
Well, she does have. I've been thinking about a lot for this episode, and I can't pinpoint it. She does have some kind of different vocal style that is very different from most of the female-fronted bands we listen to, and I can't put my finger on what it is.
Yeah.
It's unique sounding. I don't know very many others that sound like this.
I don't know if I agree with that, but okay.
Of the other groups I listen to,
Yeah.
doesn't sound like this.
It's definitely not, for example, she doesn't sound like, what's her name, from Sixpence.
Right.
Which is more, really just more effeminate in general.
Yeah.
And she doesn't do what, thankfully, which would have annoyed me even more, she doesn't do what I really hate, which is when people, quote unquote, sing a song, which is, they do all the vibrato and voicey things that you hear in church on Sunday morning.
Right.
So that was nice, but it is, to me, it was still very 90s alternative.
I don't know. Do you want to talk about the lyrics?
Sure.
It seemed kind of standard fare, like Christianity. It's like basically choose God and you'll be alive. It starts off, we need to believe the time is near. Where have they gone, those days that we feared? And then they say alive from the chorus, and love is there all night. Oh, go ahead.
No, I mean, you're right. It's so generic Christian.
Yeah.
Especially that line, where have they gone, those days we feared, which is just, to me, very typical, especially evangelical, which is, everybody likes to think the fake past is when everybody was great and the today is horrible.
Yep. And it's love is there all night and all day. You better get straight and make the change, which when she's singing it, it doesn't seem so pushy, but it's a little more pushy when I read the lyrics. And then one other part stood out to me. She said, vote for God and paste him to your heart. Won't you give God a start?
Yeah.
I've never heard anybody say vote for God.
Although I will say, the lines before it are, what's it like to live in a world where peace is a choice for every boy and girl? So first off, I'm not sure how peace is a choice for every boy and girl when someone more powerful and with more powerful weapons seems to get the choice of whether or not you're in a war zone or a peace zone.
Right.
But that said, the vote for God thing seems to be tied to a peaceful world. At least it's not tied to abortion or something like that. So I don't know.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. And the last line is just, won't you give God a start? And I feel like, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, but overall I feel like this album it's definitely evangelical. It's definitely you should choose God, but it doesn't feel as in your face pushy as some. And to me, and maybe I'm reading too much into this, but to me that kind of reflects that like California surfer kind of laid back like type thing. I don't know. I get like that vibe, and maybe again I'm reading too much into like their origins as a band, but that seems to kind of come across like, yeah, we're Christian, it's very clear in the lyrics, but we're not like, I don't know, we're not beating you over the head with it kind of thing.
Right. I got these lyrics were more cheesy to me than offensive.
Yeah.
So I agree with that. It's not Pocket Change where they're just telling you what you're doing wrong all the time.
Right. Right. Yeah. Or like, I'm sure if we talked about some hardcore albums and stuff, same type of thing where it's like really in your face, kind of militant. This is not really that.
Yeah, we got to go to Orange County where all the suburban kids had a hard time in their lives to get that spirit-filled hardcore.
Well, and that's why I pointed out they're not from that area, and I didn't. Right. I know I'm not from California. I didn't really realize where La Jolla was until I looked, and I thought, okay, well maybe that helps explain the vibe of this being a little bit different than a lot of those bands that are all from kind of the greater Los Angeles area.
All right, let's move on to the second song, Truth.
I felt like this one kind of has, maybe out of all the songs, kind of the most of a like throwback sound. I couldn't pinpoint it either, and I think you have better knowledge of this, you maybe have better, but it's kind of like a 60s or 70s, like, kind of guitar, and almost like a little bit of that surf influence. It's not, the guitar, at least the beginning, is not really distorted. It's, I don't know, more of a...
My first notes were, oh, such boring 90s music opening, you might as well be Hootie and the Blowfish. Let's listen to the beginning of the song here, because I want to see what you're talking about. I'm having a hard time placing it too, but it does have kind of almost like a late 60s folkish thing maybe going on. I'm still having, it's not exactly right either. I don't.
And then when the vocals come in, the way that they trade off reminds me kind of, you're right, maybe folk type thing, like the way they kind of bounce back and forth, definitely sound kind of retro.
Yeah. But there's also just a lot of like straight up 90s in there. So
like early 90s too.
Yes, sure. Not late 90s alternative, early 90s alternative, which is a huge difference.
Right. No, this song sounds much more dated to me now, like than the first song does.
I agree.
I do like kind of the overeager drum parts that lead into the chorus. Point that's just like a little more than they need, but I kind of like it
because otherwise the song is boring.
Right. And you could probably guess what the song's about lyrically. I mean, it's called Truth. If you grew up at the church at all, you probably got a pretty safe guess. It's just the world is full of lies. There's truth out there, and it's in God. But one thing I wanted to point out, Dakoda actually does tell us what the song is about.
That's what this song is about.
Yeah. So, like the second verse, they say, so that's what the song is about. Clear up all the lies. And he said, there's a man that died for you. And by the way, that should be who. There's a man who died for you. But anyway, and he paid the price, and then he says the truth to them is an abstract idea. And there is a little bit of that, like us and them in this song. I mean, they actually say them, meaning like the world, people who are not believers. But I feel like this one does kind of get that, like, that ethos I was talking about earlier, because they say, well, that's all right, that's okay. I don't want you to be afraid because I'm not afraid for you. That's the chorus. And so it's...
What is the "I'm not afraid for you" part? That I just wrote down, Like
I assumed it's, I know God is in control. He's going to take care of you. It's going to be okay, kind of thing.
Did they scare someone before that, though, in the song? Other than telling them, other than with cheesy lyrics?
Yeah, I don't know. The kind of the cheesy throwback sound and some of the cheesy lyrics may have scared them off, and they're trying to keep them from leaving.
Yeah, these. I mean, my first notes on these lyrics are, the corny it hurts, make it stop. It's just, it is, from the first word, it's bad. And then I even made a note when I was originally listening to this. I said, did she just say that's what this song's about? Unforgivable.
Right. We've listened to some other like bad albums, but nobody yet has done that, I don't think. So.
Yeah. There's a bunch of lyrical crutches in this album, though.
Right. And I think from what I read, Peter would write most of the music, and especially on the first album, he did almost all of it. And on this one, I think it was more of a collaboration, but I think Davia wrote a lot of the lyrics. It's not clear in the credits who did which song, so we can't just fully assign blame to any one person. But you're right, that's pretty weak.
Yeah. And we also get in this a line in this one that says, anything goes these days. Once again, the present is the worst and the past is the best.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're right. It's always, I don't know, listening to this mid-90s Christian alternative, you'd think this is like Sodom and Gomorrah or something, like at the time period, because that's how they all make it sound like, oh my God, this world is so bad. And
yeah,
I don't know, if you think about some of the things going on now, like, half the planet burning up. These mid-90s
looking back, the early 90s seem almost wholesome, but maybe that's once again just the same thing of the present is the worst and the past is the best.
I think you're right. Well, and I think there's a drive in Christianity to be saying that, and I don't mean necessarily from these bands. I think they're just picking up on the bigger culture. But
yes,
when you do that from the pulpit, for instance, you're able to convince people there's a big problem and they need to get active and get involved, whether it's send money or it's just be more involved in your church or whatever. You've got to make a crisis right now for people to say, oh, I've got to get serious about religion or God or whatever. Right.
That's a very good point. Yes, it is very much a call to action.
Yep.
All right. Trip to Pain.
Based on the video, my guess is this was kind of like the single for the album. I tried to look back, and it's not clear if anything was really pushed as a single, but this song has much more of an alternative rock sound.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of starts off with a distorted guitar, then the drums and the rest of the band come in. It's got a couple of different guitar solos, which you may have hated. I don't know. It's got like a 45-second long one, and then you think it's over, and then 15 seconds later, there's another one that lasts for 30 seconds.
Yeah, the end of this song was unbearable. But you're right, though. Like, my first note is nice guitar tone.
Yeah. It sounds very much of the time period, but to me it still doesn't sound as dated as the song before. So I found an interview with the band. It's archived on a site called gracehotel.50megs.com. And Davia says, this song is about how we can have a trial, a really painful time, but that God can save us over and over again. It's about God's grace and his mercy. Even though we put ourselves in hard situation, he still loves us and he'll back us up again and again. And so the chorus on this is, and I take a trip to pain. Will I ever be the same? And you'll save me this I know time and time again.
It feels sort of scary, and I'm crying out for you. And I take a trip to pain. Will I ever be the same? And you'll say this I know, time and time again.
I don't know, is that clever? Trip to pain?
I mean, it's kind of clever, but what I didn't understand is why is coming to God a trip to pain?
Well, I took it as, because it says, and I take a trip to pain, will I ever be the same? And you'll save me this I know time and time again. Like, I stumbled again. That's my trip to pain.
Right, but read the line right before that, especially on the first verse. The verse before that is, I sit all alone and I don't know what to do. It feels sort of scary and I'm crying out to you. And I'll take a trip to pain. Will I ever be the same? So why is crying out to you followed by a trip to pain?
Well, I took it as, you got to have the chorus repeat. So that's the bigger idea. And the verses are like examples of this
Okay.
type thing, But
Maybe
I see what you're saying.
I'll buy that.
Yeah.
It's not how I read it the first time, but I'll buy that.
And I don't know if you watched the video, Clifton.
Yes, I watched all the videos.
Okay, good. So I'll say, nowadays the video looks dated, but it looks completely of that time period.
Oh, 100%. So,
Like,
first off, there
very
was also
alternative looking video.
Yes, there was also a video for the last song, which was super boring, I thought, because it's mostly just like the members looking disaffected, a lot of like singing face close-ups, and then there was like occasional like religious iconography thrown on the screen. I don't know, it was weird.
Yeah, this one has more of like a theme to it,
Yeah. There's lake fairies. It's
right.
That has to be the most interesting part.
Right, and like little girls dressed in like fairy or angel costumes, and that part is always in color. Like they kind of splice that footage in. The rest is in black and white. And basically there's like, and I couldn't tell if it was Davia driving, by the way, but there's like 3 little boys that are wearing like basically kind of like ugly monster mask.
Yeah, way oversized.
And like they're hanging out, whatever, and basically a woman gets the boys to get into her trunk. No, this sounds really weird. And that's interspliced with like the band playing on the back of a flatbed truck while it's driving. And by the end, she takes them to a drive-in movie theater where the band is playing, and the boys get out and enjoy the show. And I don't know if that's like she's sneaking them in there because they're hidden in the back.
Right.
I don't know what's going on, but it you kind of need to watch it because it's just got that pure like 90s alternative vibe all the way through it.
It does. There was when she had them get into the trunk, I thought that they were going to go meet the lake fairies, but that would have been far too interesting for this video, so they just went to the show.
And that's kind of what I thought, is that like it's one light and one dark, but there's no like the fairies seem to have nothing to do with any of it.
Nope.
Like there's no connection other than they just keep showing images of them.
There is connection. I don't know. They could have done this later, but there is connection visually in that sometimes they'll have a band member lean in to the camera, and then you will cut to the fairies, and the fairies already leaned into the camera and kind of leans out.
Good point. Right.
So there's some stuff like that. So it kind of ties in visually sometimes, but you can almost feel like the video wasn't interesting enough, so they went back and shot the lake fairies and just spliced it all in.
Good point.
I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't know if like Peter's association with MTV or what, but again, I will just state this video is better than most of the Christian stuff at the time, and I feel like this song could have gotten probably played on other things because it's not explicitly Christian. I mean, if you know what you're listening for, sure it is, but it's not like, like the song before or some of the other ones on here. So I don't know if this got played outside of kind of like Christian music television, whatever that was at the time, but could have, maybe.
Yeah. There's a lyric that I want to... The roads you made for me allow me to be free. What do you think that means?
I mean, my first instinct is like God always having a plan for your life, and so I just need to like walk in that, and then I'll be free. I don't know.
Which is a very interesting concept of freedom that says if I limit myself to this very narrow thing, then I'll be free.
Good point. But that is such the message, though, right? Like
Yes.
freedom in Christ. But when we say freedom in Christ, that means you have to do X, Y, Z all the time, a certain way.
Right. Let's move on to the next song, Uglier.
So I'll be honest, I love this song. Clifton could probably, knowing me, could guess why, but it's just like, and I realize it really sounds nothing like the rest of the album.
Yep.
It seems kind of like almost like the most punk song on the album.
Yeah, I mean, it opens up with like the same 4-chord punk riff. As like Blink-182's what was their big song off of I forget around that time.
Oh,
is it called Damn It? Is that the album?
I know what you're talking. I guess this is Growing Up, whatever that one where that's the chorus.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and honestly, I checked it out. It's not that much faster than Alive, the song that starts the album, but it's just a little bit more punk, kind of rougher sounding.
Interesting. It feels so much faster.
It does. And I think one of the things that really stands out, it's very distorted guitar, and then Peter's vocals for sure. I guess he's singing through like a phone or something.
No, they're just distorted in some way, yeah.
Yeah, which you hear on some other albums at the time. It's definitely kind of a mid-90s thing, but I don't know. I thought it worked.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun during the chorus. Someone's kind of shouting the lyrics in the background over him singing. Honestly, the lyrics, not so straightforward on this one.
Yeah, there's weird.
Yeah, I'll just hear it. This song's not that long, so I'll tell you. He says, "Yesterday and a year ago were once the same, but not anymore, and I'm just happy to see you in the meantime. Looking around for rags to cover embarrassing marks that left you scarred from messing around after school drinking moonshine. I'm so happy I'm not blind." And then the chorus is basically, "I'm ugly, but he was uglier. It's a good thing I can see. I'm smelly, but he was smellier. Aren't you glad that you're not me? I'm so happy you're not blind." Which, I get the blind, I get the moonshine connection, but there's room for interpretation on this.
Yes.
And if you'll allow me, I stumbled upon a place that has all the answers for this, which I'm going to use on some of our future episodes now that I've got a bookmark. But an old Usenet news group, which is still going evidently, but rec.music.christian. And in the mid-90s, there were all kinds of discussions on there about Dakoda Motor Company, especially about Peter King, and people talking about how he wasn't very nice because a guy came up to him after they had played an 18-song set already and asked why they didn't play one of the songs off their first album, and Peter kind of dismissed him and wasn't nice, and so people questioned his salvation, and other people shared stories, and it was a back and forth, and, if you were in this world at the time, that probably sounds about accurate.
Wow.
So this is from October 29th, 1994. A user was asking for help trying to figure out what uglier meant, and they were stumped. And here's the next post. Someone said, "I'm not sure what he meant by this line," and in parentheses, "awesome song, but for some reason it gives me a bad vibe. If you recall, he was talking about someone who got messed up because he was drinking moonshine. And then he says to the same person that I'm ugly, but he was uglier. I really hope that he isn't lifting himself above others. What do you think?" Here's the next post. "I don't know. This is definitely one of the more unusual songs," and in parentheses, excluding stuff by Steve Taylor, kind of unusual lyrics. "Can anyone else help us out?" And so in the next post, Jerry comes in, and he kind of breaks it apart. He says, "I think the beginning might be saying that for a long time the guy was living in sin or whatever, but now he's a Christian. The way he lives now, yesterday, and the way he used to live a year ago are no longer the same. He says, maybe looking for forgiveness to be a way to be rid of sins that have taken a toll on your life. And when he says, I'm so happy I'm not blind, in a spiritual sense, maybe he can see the error of his ways now, or the blindness caused by the sin in his life has been removed since he became a Christian. And, basically Jerry talks about the he in the verse when it says, I'm ugly, but he was uglier is capitalized. So they're thinking that's like Jesus taking on the
Very
sin.
clearly. Why is this even a discussion?
Because we just had to discuss this stuff back in the day. So I'm thankful for, Youth Group Archives from 1994 for clearing this up. Thank you, Jerry. And
I am baffled by the fact that anyone had to, I'm baffled by the people who were stumped by this song. I mean, to me, there's no question that the chorus is obviously talking about Jesus. So yeah, I am ugly, he's uglier. And that's, I guess that's something that gets ignored more in conservative Christianity because it's so concerned with like looks and outward appearances and stuff. But in the Gospels and in the Bible, it's always that Jesus was not a worldly figure. He was always, I don't know, okay. Sorry. It blows me away that.
I mean, and speaking of ugly Jesus, I mean, have you seen The Passion of the Christ? Whew! I get it.
Yeah, which is not going to be accurate to like. There's nothing in the Gospels that suggests that Jesus was good looking, and if anything, if you actually look at what are claimed to be the prophecies for Jesus, there's every reason to expect that he's not going to be good looking. There is I think it's an Italian film about Jesus where he's just like some short, ugly, fat guy. That's probably the most accurate.
Just like Danny DeVito playing Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh, I would like to see that. So I'm curious, what did you think of this song? Because it's quite the departure from everything we've heard before.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, especially the kind of distorted vocals were really nice, and there's just more going on. It seems to be having more fun to me. It's not a punk song, but it's kind of like it's like just really punk adjacent alternative.
Right.
And I hate to be an asshole, but there's not the boring Davia's boring vocals on this, sadly. What?
No, it's fine. Yeah, I mean, I liked the change too. I like her songs as well, but I enjoyed. It was definitely a shift.
Yeah, and it's done in 2 minutes and 18 seconds, and to me, it's a good punk influenced song. I will say that on Spotify, this is the least listened to song on the album.
That is so weird to me because this would be like probably my number one choice.
Yeah, because I thought like when I heard the song, I was like, oh, this is probably a single, like, because bands always have like singles that don't sound like the band, right? So when I first heard it, I was like, oh, this is probably the single, for radio friendly play. I don't know.
Huh. Well, maybe
but it's not. It is. Well, at least it's not popular.
Right. That's interesting. Well, so we're not really going to talk about the next song. It's called Love Runs Home, but I'll just say, whew, what a contrast. Like, you had that one, and then it's like, slow down into Love Runs Home, and it just like, I think I skipped that song every time, and I forced myself to listen to it because of this, but then we're not really talking about it because, I don't know. Did you think that was just a weird placement? Yeah,
but I don't know how else you do it because it's not like the catchiest of their standard fare is at the front of the album.
Right.
So if of the songs left, there's not a lot of fast ones.
Well, of
the standard fare songs that are left, there's not a lot of fast ones.
Right. So speaking of that, I think the next one we are going to talk about is Where Did It Go? And that's the thing is like you have Uglier, then you have Love Runs Home, which is like really slow and just.
I feel I balance my world in the palm of my hand, as if I could carry its weight. And I'm tired of racing with this spinning globe. I'm tired of counting on fate. And all the pain.
I don't know. I'm not into it, but whatever. It's very like they both, Peter and Davia sing together. It's very like sweet sounding. It's just, but then you hit Where Did It Go? And I like I don't even know how to describe the beginning of this. I'm wondering if you could just like play a little bit of it for us.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so that's better than me trying to describe it to you. But again, you go from Uglier, this really slow song, and then you get really surprised by this one. I'm curious, Clifton, just like your first thoughts when you first heard this.
Yeah, surprise is the right word, right? I stopped because the first time I listened to this, I just listened to it in the background, and I stopped what I was doing to go look up this song. and I enjoy it. He has kind of these like uncontrollable vocals, right? Which comes off really well. It comes off better the first time you listen to it probably than the other times, because I don't think he's actually doing a very good job of the uncontrollable vocals.
Yeah.
But it's a great concept.
Right. It's fun and it's different, and I don't know if I've heard another band do this, especially in the Christian world, but
definitely.
Regardless, that makes it pretty fun. So basically, like, he kind of tells a little bit of a story, and each verse is pretty long, and so I guess, I don't know, I'm assuming maybe they didn't originally decide to do it this way, but probably just thought, like, oh, we'll crank up the speed, and I'll just act like I'm singing all this. I noticed, Clifton, you had on the folder where you took the vocals out and had the vocals separate, and so I listened to the song that was just vocals, and I was like, there is no way he's
not saying this.
He's like kind of trying to. But he's not. But it's kind of this story about, like, I think basically like two girls that grew up together and were tight and close, but then as they're growing up, they kind of get separated, as far as like one's kind of on the narrow path and one is kind of going astray, and that one has a boyfriend that's leading her astray, but by the end she kind of comes back together and all that.
Has some real judgy language about that boyfriend thing too, like choosing, and I don't know, it's
yeah, it's definitely kind of got that vibe. I mean, the chorus is always, in goodness it was there between us once, and both Peter and, well, they lead up to it, both Peter and Davia say that, and then they say, where did it go? Or sorry, tell me, where did it go, little girl, where did it go? Hard and still, clinging to the world. And I like these songs where they both kind of share vocal duties.
Me too. I think that works really well.
Yeah,
it's a great contrast.
Right. I think that they're strongest when they do that. And so honestly, I think this is like a pretty fun, good song. And again, this is probably like my second favorite song on the album, just because it's so weird and different, and just, yeah, I don't know.
I will say that, with the fun that is that opening, with the uncontrollable vocals, to break into the kind of this just standard, tell me where did it go, little girl, where did it go chorus, I found disappointing.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough.
And then, this isn't a super long song, but it's longer than 2 minutes and 18 seconds.
Right.
But, like, the entire second half of the album is just guitar solo, chorus, guitar solo, chorus, and almost, no matter if it's standard fare or this kind of stuff, all their songs are arranged exactly the same.
Right.
Where they're all, verse, chorus, guitar solo, chorus, guitar solo, chorus, guitar solo out.
Yeah.
And they could have tried a little bit harder there, but it's a fun song. And if I'd heard this one, I may have been more of a fan, or maybe I just would have listened to this one or two songs, I don't know. But it's more fun. It's more of this punk stuff, and I do want to talk about, especially the second verse. Okay. I find really weird as far as the vocals go. Maybe not weird isn't the right word, but anyway, I'm going to read it. This is where the friend is going astray. Any other way would have been better for her. Boyfriends aren't always friends, and forsaking her best friend, she chose to lose. There is a way that seems right to a young girl. Well, you know what the Bible says, don't you? Rough. Like, what?
Well, I did notice that there's a verse, I think it's in Proverbs, where it says there's a way that seems right to a young man,
Yeah.
or way that seems right to man, but blah, blah, blah. So I thought maybe that, well, you know what the Bible says, don't you? It's in reference to that. But you're right, you could read it another way, and it's like, dun, dun, dun. Pretty
Yeah.
judgy.
I do like the boyfriends aren't always friends,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't like the she chose to lose.
Well, so let me read the last verse too, because it kind of there's one other part I want to talk about in that, and it finishes the story. But it says people are subject to change, which is a good thing sometimes. She was talking of leaving him, coming back to Tuesday nights and pizza with her friends, which I'm assuming is like Bible study or something.
Which, by the way, in the thank yous, Davia mentions Tuesday Night Gang.
Ah, good catch. Good catch. And then here's the last part of that verse. It says, then the weapons started firing straight from hell, and you realize it's not such a hard thing when best friends are all you've got. So Clifton, like, what are weapons firing straight from hell? Sounds kind of badass.
Or it's just a boyfriend.
Yeah.
That's a temptation.
Right. It got a little extreme, kind of in our metaphors there, but
Yeah.
interesting.
I don't know if this is the best time to have this conversation, but people are always subject to change, which is a good thing sometimes. I started thinking about this with the Pocket Change album because, and it continues into this album in that there is this, the fact that God doesn't change is always this good thing, right? And then, but, and I don't want to mean this overly, because I know that the reason that Christians want people to be able to change is to come to God instead of to the world. But there is a lot of that, complaining about change, especially in that last song on the Pocket Change album. There's a lot of talking about people changing, and that's good on that song, on that album, which is people coming to God. And then there's this one, which is people are subject to change, which is a good thing sometimes, which I assume also means it's a good thing if you can change, if that means you can come to God. Which is this very weird thing to me, whereas like in my worldview, life always changes, And I say this especially I just got back from my grandmother's funeral, which was very sad, but in my worldview, life always changes, and that's part of the flair of life, right? Is that some days you have one thing and some days you have another thing. And it's interesting to me, this concept of, well, if I couldn't change, I wouldn't,
Yeah, you're right. There's a real focus in Christianity on change, and it's just one of two ways, usually, like good or
Right.
bad. There's no gray area in there. It's either you changed for God or you chose Satan. I don't know.
Right.
It doesn't seem like there's a lot of nuance.
Right. There's good change and there's bad change.
Uh-huh.
And once you're in the good part, you wish you hope that you don't change, I guess.
Right. Because, again, the only way that everyone's going to look at it is once you're in the good, the only way you can change is bad. There's no real, evolution of thought or anything like that. It's just good or bad.
Should we move on to Stand Up?
Yeah. This one sounds a little bit dated to me. It starts with a funky kind of bass line, and then the guitar and drums come in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of got this strong lead guitar part before the verse. The chorus does have Peter and Davia singing back and forth, which I do think works well. And I do like another couple, just musically, a couple other parts of the song. I like where it slows down in the middle and then Peter shouts, "Here we go!" and it moves back into the faster part. But then, of course, a guitar solo. If you like guitar solos, you might like this album.
Yeah.
Right. But I want to talk about the lyrics, but is there anything else musically you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, when Peter goes, huh!
Yeah. Yeah, I left that part out.
No, so at this point in the album, I was really thinking, if you like this kind of stuff, this is well done.
Mm-hmm.
If this kind of, girl-fronted, early 90s alternative rock band is your kind of thing, you're going to enjoy this album. That's it.
Well, this is... So I have it in my notes, but I'll just talk about it now. This is a step up I think, from a lot of the other Christian stuff at the time. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the problems is they're on Myrrh Records, which is like Amy Grant's label. Now, they did have, I think, I look back, they did release stuff by like the 77s and Guardian the same year and stuff, but it's just, I don't know if it's really the right fit for them. I don't know where else they would have been, because at that time, it was pretty early for a lot of those like more alternative labels. But for instance, one of their first big tours, and you can see clips of it on that VHS that goes with this, they opened for Petra. Like, Petra. Yeah, I just don't, that is not the right fit for them at all.
And it's also, honestly, kind of the wrong age group, because Petra seems to always be aiming for like 14 to 15-year-olds to me.
Yeah, and
they always adjust their sound.
Like metal in the, or not metal, but hard rock in the 80s, and like, I don't know, it's just, it's a weird fit, and I guess it's like, well, who else would they have opened for back in like 93? I don't know, but I think I kind of feel for this band, because I imagine it was pretty frustrating at times.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if maybe a Lorma would have been a slightly better fit, but there's nothing that would have been a great fit. Yeah,
you're right, and there wasn't like, but you're right, even because Poor Old Lou's first album came out, I think in 93, so you're right, even that would have been like a much better fit, I think, at the time than this. Yeah. But anyway, I think they struggle being misplaced. All that being said, though, the lyrics to this song are quite the turn for them, I think. I'm going to read like a little bit that I found on that same Grace Hotel site, and this is Chuck talking about it. He says, "It's bold in the sense that it's a direct statement to Satan," Chuck says. "The lyrics say, 'Go back to where you came from. I command you in Jesus' name.' It's powerful. It's saying, 'Look, you have no business being here.' It's a straightforward song." And he's right. It is straightforward. I'll just read you a little bit. He says, "You aren't a friend of mine. You're not welcome here. You're everything I despise. And I haven't got the time to waste on you all day. I've got to step into the light. The Lord is my shield, and I shall not be afraid. He covers me with his love. He leads me on his way each and every day with his gifts from above." And then, the chorus is what he said. "Go back to where you came from. I command you in Jesus' name. Thank you, God, for your son above. And victory is our claim." Like, ooh, those lyrics are super cringy and really kind of a departure, I think, for this band, because most of the time, like I said, they're pretty kind of easygoing, like, God's the way, but, we love you. And this one is like, get behind me, Satan. I don't know. It's just quite the change for them.
Yeah, and, I didn't take I 100% agree with the interpretation of the song, except that I didn't take it to be a judgmental get behind me, Satan, so much as this isn't what I want to be doing right now, kind of get behind me, Satan, like,
Yeah, I don't know that they're being judgy of other people. It's just like, it's just such an in-your-face kind of Christianese type of song that is not the norm you see on a lot of the other ones on this album. I don't know if it was written, I don't know when it was written in the process, like earlier or later, or, different folks had a chance with the lyrics, but yeah, it's a departure for sure.
And then the lyrics where you stopped off was, "You got to stand up for each other, got to be there for your brother and live like it's meant to be," which is a good part of the song. It's another one of those parts where Peter and Davia go back and forth on the vocals, and it works really well. I will say that I gave up on the song about halfway through and went to watch the music video because I only wanted to listen to it once. And then I was tempted to turn the music video off about the same time that I skipped through on the song. I don't know. Like I said, if this is your kind of thing, it's nice, but it's not my kind of thing. And then The video reminds me more of that first video once again, where lots of close-up singing faces. The one like quirky thing they try to do is that everyone plays bass on things that aren't bass, like a log or I don't know. They're mostly log type things. Except for Davia, who actually plays bass on a bass, but she doesn't play bass. That's so quirky.
Yeah.
And I made two of the notes here: skateboarding and a radio flyer wagon. Nice. And then I made a note. That's a cute dress. The brown one with the little flowers. Gotta miss 90s fashion.
Yeah, and so speaking of that, I do think there was an element of probably every, young, well, not boy. I mean, every male who looked at this probably had a little bit of a crush on Davia. I'm sure I did a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that was an element with this band as well, and I've read, where did I read? Somebody was talking about it in one of the posts I read about them, that they had a crush on her. I'm a little curious how that played out in person for them sometimes.
Yeah, it can be really annoying for bands with that
I'm
kind of stuff.
I'm sure. And
yeah. Do you remember that? Do you remember the anniversary show that we went to where that guy was like, "Show us your tits" to what's her name, the keyboardist in the anniversary, and then the lead singer kicked him in the face.
Oh wow, no, not until now you're mentioning it. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, lead singer kicked him in the face. It was great.
Yeah. Well, and you would hope at a Christian show that's not so explicitly happening, but I'm sure she had all kinds of fans when they were doing autographs, and just I don't know. I'm sure it was annoying. But I think that was probably part of this back in the day too.
I was gonna go to the next song.
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna say. So the last song we're talking about is the last one. We're skipping two songs that, again, I remember when I listened to this, like I was like, skip. Like, I don't know if I ever, I mean, at this time I made myself listen to them once or twice through, but I feel like back in the day I just skipped.
I skipped them. My only notes for "Oh That Girl" is just an eye roll emoji.
Yeah. So we're actually going to skip, I guess, 3 songs before we talk about the last one. And that's basically how I listened to this album. I skipped Love Runs Home earlier and skipped these 3 and just enjoyed these songs. So, pro tip, if you're looking to listen to this album again, that would be my take. Skip the slow ones.
And you like faster songs.
Yeah, but
some people like slow songs, Jay.
And I do on some albums. This is just, I don't know. But anyway, I feel like you're not completely disagreeing with me though on this one. So
Nope.
The last song is called "Rockin' in the Mall," and as I read earlier, I think this got used in like a Chevy commercial. I do not remember this, but part of it did. It's like a short, fast song. Davia and Peter sing the lyrics together. It's got lots of the guitar, and it kind of has like a little bit of like an old time jazzy feel to the way, just the delivery of the lyrics.
Yeah, it's a rock and blues song. Yeah.
In the morning and the evening on Saturday long, see them dressed in the Saturday best. They're not sure if they'll hit or swear, but they don't care. They're guaranteed spots. They go rocking in the mall. The line ain't wait for a chance to date, the loser of their dreams.
Okay, yeah. The one reason I wanted to talk about it though is I don't really know what's going on with the lyrics here.
Yeah, right. What is this song about? That is my note on the lyrics.
Yeah, so let me read them and then we can discuss it a little more. But it says, "In the morning and the evening, all Saturday long, you see them dressed in their Saturday best. They're not sure if they're hip or square. They don't care because they're guaranteed a spot as they go rocking in the mall. Lying in wait for a chance to date the loser of their dreams."
Can we stop with the first verse there and say, okay,
yeah,
that's fine.
Right. That seems fine, and that's very normal. And this is the 90s. Everyone hung out, especially like teenagers, hung out at the mall, right?
Now the second verse is where it gets weird.
Yeah, it gets real weird. I'm going to leave out kind of the like bridge when I read these lyrics because I want to circle back to that. But it says, "Lying in wait for a chance to date the loser of their dreams. They don't care if it's a king or a queen. They don't care. They say second best was never too good for me." Yeah, I don't know. Let me finish. Again, I'm leaving out the bridge for a second. I'll circle back to that. But here's the last kind of part. It says, "The silent voice amongst the silent choice screams out loud and clear, 'How, oh how did we ever get here? Well, I don't know, and how could I know my choice was so severe? Like, what in the world are they talking about? Like, people, like,
hmm
hooking up at the mall and really regretting it? I don't know what this...
So here's how I read the song, and to me, it has a lot to do with what's the one with the crazy lyrics? Where did it go?
Uh-huh.
To me, they're very similar in subject matter, because I think the second verse is setting up people like just kind of casually having a good time. I don't mean that like casual sex. I just mean casually having a good time. It doesn't say that they're hooking up here. It just says that they're waiting for a chance to date. And then the loser of their dreams is that's pretty judgy. That's
Yeah.
really like, I don't know what that's all about, but I mean, I'm not going to say that when I was a kid I never thought that of other people, because I definitely did. But I don't think I ever wrote it down. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think I ever said it to other people who weren't in my very close friend group either.
And I didn't know if this was just like, they're a little bit older, like in their 20s, and are they just making fun of people who hang around like the Orange Julius, Claire's, Walden Books? Like, are they just viewing them all as losers? Because, like, 1990s, like, the mall was the place to be. Sorry, Dakota, we can't all be cool surfing dudes. Like, some of us don't live near the beach, and the mall is the only place we can hang out.
Let's interpret the last verse here, which is the silent voice among the silent choice. Screams out loud and clear. So I think the silent choice is to casually have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Instead of doing something different, which we'll come back to. Screams out loud and clear. How did we get here? Well, I don't know, and how could I know my choice was so severe? I think they're saying, the way I read this, I think this is from hell. And they're saying, oh, how could I have known that the choices I made as a teenager were so severe as to end me up in hell?
Because they were hanging out at the mall?
Instead of being good Christians?
So if you hang out at the mall, you're going to hell?
Well, and dating the loser of their dreams.
Okay. Yeah, so the part we haven't read is the bridge, and I don't know if this clarifies it or just makes it more confusing, but they sing, travel around the world, what do I see? People dying in front of me. It's the same everywhere I go. And then they move into that silent voice part.
Yeah. I don't know what that means.
I don't know. Maybe you're right, people making bad decisions. This just seems, the last line is, my choice was so severe. These lyrics seem pretty severe, if that's really their meaning. Come on, it's the mall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
don't know. I like the sound all right on this song. It's not one of my favorites. It's an interesting one to end on.
No, it's a good song. And it's not really punkish. When they've departed from their usual fare, they've gone in a punk direction most of the time. But this is, like I said, more just like a rock and blues song.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, though, the guitars sound great. Whoever's producing the guitars on this album is doing a great job.
Yeah, I think it's that guy from Mary's Danish recorded it, which again, I find strange that Myrrh Records was cool with just like, somebody who's not associated with the Christian world doing this. But it sounds good. I mean,
yeah, I agree.
Overall, I guess we can maybe, if you want, we'll jump down to kind of the, whole album thoughts, but it does. Sure. Like, I feel like overall this album sounds really good. I mean, parts of it sound dated, but it's not because it's poorly recorded. It's just the style.
Right. No, it's very well recorded. I mean, it would stand up today as a recording, I think.
What did you think about, like, cover artwork, packaging, all that?
The cover, I think, is super boring. My note is, go back to the Gap, you preppies.
That's funny. I kind of like it. I mean, I feel like it's very much of the time, but it
is.
I kind of like where they place, like, he's got his hand out and they place the Welcome Race fans there, and I don't know. It's simple, but well done for being simple.
I mean, it's not bad, and I think it gives you a good sense of what the album is. But it's just a picture of the band, and kind of some moody early '90s alternative lighting, Now the rest of the packaging I thought was very like early Tooth and Nail like.
Interesting.
Which is probably my way of saying it's probably very much of its day in my sheltered Christian worldview,
Yeah. And I thought they did, the album is called Welcome Race Fans, and so they tie the packaging is really tied to that. They're at like a drag race, whatever they call that place. And they're posing around a car, and they're posing around like the starting lights.
Yeah. And it's well done. I will say I find it uncreative in the sense that Dakoda Motor Company, which they just threw on the last, becomes Welcome. Their album is Welcome Race Fans. It's kind of low effort to me. And then getting from there to a race thing is low effort. But it's for all the low effort stuff, it's done well.
It ties it together.
My only complaint about the packaging is that on the inside of the I think it's a quad fold page here.
Mhm.
On the inside of it, all the lyrics are in two very long columns, so it becomes a little bit weird to read.
Yeah, and the thank yous and the credits are oriented one way, and then the other one,
Right.
is oriented the other way. So like the lyrics are vertical, but the credits, I guess, are horizontal. And
Yeah.
when you're not holding it in front of you, it can be a real pain because
because I have a scanned copy of it,
right? Yeah.
Yeah. I read all the thank yous, and other than that Tuesday Night Gang, there was nothing in the thank yous that stood out to me, which is kind of weird. Well, there is Billabong.
Yeah, again, so there's that surfer connection, but you're right.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of like thanking a lot of other Christian bands and stuff, which is interesting. They also, Chuck Cummings pays cymbals, Darwin drums, Vic First sticks, and Remo heads. So like, I don't know if the drummer is sponsored, but possibly, or he just really prefers those things.
Knowing how many other bands he has in, probably so.
Yeah, so that's kind of a new thing we're seeing.
Yeah. No, well, on the last album, we didn't mention it, but on the Pocket Change album, it actually says that what's his name, Tim, the lead singer, is like Tim plays exclusively Laney amps and Fender guitars, which isn't true because I've seen plenty of videos of them with not Fender guitars, but he does play a Laney amp. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, any other before we kind of go to where are they now? Any other thoughts about the album itself?
Yeah, like I said, if this is your thing, then it's a good album.
Yeah.
It's just not my thing.
I don't know that it's a lot of my thing either now, but it's not bad.
And it being a transitional album for you makes we didn't talk about this, but it makes a lot more sense to me now that you liked this, because coming out of Newsboys into this does make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess that was one advantage of them being on a label like Myrrh that had like really good Christian distribution. You're gonna find this like everywhere. I just again feel like they were a little mismatched, but I don't know where they would have gone otherwise. One thing that's kind of interesting is Davia left that right after this album. I even read somewhere that she wanted to leave before it was finished recording.
Oh wow!
And so they got Melissa to I think she toured this mostly, and then they did another album for Atlantic called Railroad, and that one is really not explicitly Christian. Like when you look at the lyrics, it's much more just kind of alternative rock band. I don't even know that you'd know they were Christian if you didn't know the history. And I know Peter was frustrated a lot with the whole like Christian band thing in some of the interviews I read. So I'm guessing that was kind of a conscious decision to move in that direction.
Yeah, I did read that newspaper article that you put on the server that, where it was the drummer, but he talked about kind of shying away from the Christian band thing.
Yeah, it's interesting because
this is really early for that.
Right. And it's interesting because in this album, Welcome Race Fans, I don't really see that. I don't get that sense. But evidently between when they released the album and touring for it and the next one, I guess a lot changed, and there was some real frustration with that. And I get it from reading that chat I was talking about with people judging Peter because he was probably a little snappy with his answer because they just finished a set and somebody asked him a stupid question. So, it must have been really difficult as bands back then to try to always put on that smiley face.
That to me would have come off as, you played 19 songs, why didn't you play all 22 of your recorded songs?
Exactly, right? Like, it's just like, come on, man. Yeah, you want to know where they are now?
Yeah, tell us.
So this is, again, interesting to me. They have a website that's still up to date. In fact, I think you can still order t-shirts and stuff from it, which is super cool. And by the way, other bands, that would be cool if you did that, because some of us have nostalgia for some of this stuff, and, it'd just be interesting to get that stuff. But they still play together occasionally. One of the last times was they opened for the Prayer Chain in 2018 when they did some of those reunion shows. So that's just 3 years ago. They, from what I can tell, for Peter, he still kind of works in the surf world and does photography. I think he lives in Hawaii now.
Okay.
He's got a really active Instagram with lots of photos of surfers, interviews, etc. His Instagram is just Peter King Photo, all one word. I will say after this, he was in another band called the Surfers with Kelly Slater and a couple other pro surfers. I think Chuck, actually maybe Derek too, played in that as well. But that was actually out on a major label as well. That was like late 90s. But he's kind of stayed in that, seems like in that surfing world since then. Davia is a celebrity makeup artist. Her last name is now Matson. And you can find interviews with her talking about styles and her work with the actress Allie Landry, who, from what I can tell, seems to be a good friend of hers. And hers is also Style by Davia, one word, on Instagram. So you can see that. Chuck Cummings, the drummer, he's a realtor in San Clemente, California, and still plays drums with his band, the Altar Billies, which is a rockabilly band with Mike Stand of the Altar Boys. And I will mention Chuck was in a ton of bands before and after Dakoda Motor Company, including Lifesavers and Ellis Underground. So there's that Mike Knott connection. He was also in the Aunt Betty's, which, side note, I think their big album came out in 96 on a major label. So Chuck had 2 albums out in 96 on major labels. I don't know, it must have been interesting to kind of have that anticipation. But he also played on a Value Pack album. He also played on Fan Mail. So lots of stuff. Guy. Yeah, like he's a busy dude. He hasn't played on as many things recently, just Alter Billy stuff, but busy for a while. Elliot is a director of product management for a company called Bluebeam, which I think, if I get it right, is the company that helps production
Bluebeam?
Not production companies, like construction companies with software.
Yeah, Bluebeam is the software I use for PDFs.
Okay, well there you go.
As an architect, it's a great software for PDFs if you're an architect working in construction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. He also played guitar for Push Start Wagon a little bit after this. And then Derek is the one I had a little more trouble finding on, but I think he lives in Fresno now, but he does have a new band called Marsha. And I mean, as new as in like last fall, like 2020. They've got some songs on Spotify. It's not bad, actually.
Okay.
And their website is marsha.rocks.
All right, Jay, what are we listening to next week?
We are going to take a little bit of a turn and listen to 1997's EP by Christian punk band 121, In the Year King Uzziah Died.
Awesome. This is one of my favorite albums from back in the day. I still listen to it sometimes today.
Yeah, I liked it a lot too. I'm looking forward to kind of discussing it again.
Yeah, it's very interesting, but it's a super fun album though. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Your Music Saved Us.
If you enjoyed your time with us, please leave us a review or share this episode on the social media of your choice, where you can probably follow us at Your Music Saved Us or email us at yourmusicsavedus@gmail.com. And I'll just throw in, we also have a Facebook group where we'd love to interact with you. If you have ideas for future shows, or you have an album that you just love or hate, but want to, maybe discuss with us, we'd be open to doing that too. So let us know.
The music in this episode is the work of Dakoda Motor Company and is used with apologies, not permission. So you can go to their website to buy t-shirts.
Exactly, yeah. And I think you can still get this album places, at least on Amazon, right. I noticed. So
awesome.